best of luck. Now then, after hearing the news that numerous old friends had passed away through drug overdoses or by committing suicide, documentary maker Jez Lewis went back to his hometown of Hebden Bridge to try and get to the root of the problem.
We were born in Hebden Bridge to carry on Hebden Bridge tradition. We just take a lot of drugs, drink a lot of alcohol, to grow a lot of cannabis, and to have a jolly good time in these beautiful Pennine Hills.
Yeah, Hebden Bridge is a drug town with a tourist problem, innit? It is though. No one's got no bottle, have they?
You can't leave because you can leave, but you always end up coming back, don't you?
Why? Why do you always come back?
I'd be scared of leaving my mates and mum and my dad.
Because it's a big black hole, that's why, man.
Over the course of 18 months, whilst Jez was making his film about the tragedy that surrounded the town, a further 11 young people died.
So Jez Lewis and Josephine Jones, whose elder brother Sam was one of those who died during the filming, join us now, along with Martin Vines from Drugscope. Actually, it was Liam that died during the filming, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's because you've lost both brothers. Let's start with you, Jez. What are your memories of Hebden Bridge before you moved away? What sort of place, as you were growing up, was it?
Well, already when I was growing up, it had two sort of personalities, and I lived on a street of sort of very ordinary Hebden people, but at weekends I would go and spend the weekend with sort of hippies who lived in houses that they'd bought very cheaply on the tops. So I was seeing both sides of that sort of split community from my childhood, and the weekends I never understood until years later why I would be giggling all through a Sundays, because the air was full of dope and you know, a very casual approach to drugs and alcohol.
This is it's a very beautiful part of the world, and it's North Yorkshire. And what's the history of the town? Is it was an industrial town.
West Yorkshire, yeah.
In West Yorkshire, yeah. Industrial town, and then when the industry died out, it became derelict. Parts of it were derelict, and at one stage there was even thought that it was going to be knocked down, and then it was taken over by people who came with a much more relaxed attitude to life.
Well, yeah, I mean, the mills, a lot of them burned down in suspected arson attacks, and a sort of section of our street was derelict and was bulldozed while I lived there. And there was a risk that the whole thing would be abandoned, but there was a real push from a couple of people, some hippies, some locals, to kind of regenerate the town in a real sort of sense that it could be made to thrive again.
So what was it that made you want to look into this and make this documentary about this specific subject?
Well, the trigger was my friend Emma dying, and when she died, she was like the sort of 10th person I knew who died, all from Hebden. And so I did some desk research to see whether that was a radically unusual experience, and it turned out that it was. So I was going to do a 15-minute film. It's my first film, and I had no money, so I was just going to do something short and quite contained. But then when Sam died and Liam was saying to me, you know, you've got to film this. I didn't know Liam before, but he's saying, you've got to film, you've got to keep going and show what's happening here. So that sort of snowballed, really.
But it wasn't as straightforward as that with all of the kind of residents of Hebden, though, when you were sort of speaking to different people and wanting to get a real sort of cross-spectrum of the community. Not everybody was that open and that willing to come forward and talk about this.
No, I mean, well, some people just said, I don't know what you're talking about. The MP for the area lived in Hebden Bridge, and, you know, I interviewed her and I interviewed the mayor of Hebden Bridge, and they just said they were very generous with their time, but they said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then other people would just block me. The school wouldn't answer my phone calls and this kind of thing. You know, the police sort of pestered me more than anything, and the mayor of Calderdale threatened to pull a public meeting if I turned up with a camera. And that's part of the reason I reorientated to the park, really, the people who were not thriving.
So how, and we stress that this is a very beautiful part of the world, as I said before, you know, with a thriving tourist industry, with this undercurrent of something else going on. But what are the figures? What are the numbers over the past how many years?
Well, officially the figures are fairly unremarkable, but part of the reason for that is that, for example, if a Hebden lad goes to Halifax and hangs himself, which happens, then it doesn't count as a Hebden suicide, for example. While I was filming, as you saw, there were 11 people died. Since then, at least 5 people I filmed with have died since I finished filming. So, I mean, those are sort of anecdotal, if you like, but
Are
those
these
are real.
local people, or are they people who've been attracted to what appears to be a quite active drug scene?
Mostly, I think mostly they're local people, really. Yeah, I mean, it's people sort of born and bred, more or less.
And you've got a word, is it cluster? What is it you call this? You call it
A suicide cluster.
a suicide cluster.
Well, that's from the literature. It's an accepted sort of phenomenon, and they can happen in one little area, or they can happen in a short time. For example, if someone like Kurt Cobain commits suicide, you might get copycat suicides around the world, but over a short time. And in Hebden Bridge, it seems to be over a long time, but within a small area.
So, and I mean, from doing your research and from this documentary, what have you found, like the reasons for this?
Well, I mean, again, my reason is, the reasons I see are more to do with my own interpretation, is more of a sort of focus study, if you like, than a statistical analysis. And it seems to be that most people I know in Hebden know at least half a dozen people have committed suicide, and most people they know take drugs. And so you've got a normalisation of a situation. So if somebody's feeling desperate, they're going to think, well, shall I talk to my parents? Shall I phone the Samaritans? Shall I get drunk? Shall I commit suicide? And it's one of the options that they know other people have taken.
But you say that the locals there, the youngsters, see it as actually really quite normal.
Well, yeah, they do. In fact, to an extent I did until I did the desk research, and that was the things like, I've got friends from university who don't know anybody who's committed suicide or died of a drug overdose, and they're saying to me, Jez, that's not all right.
Not normal.
Josephine, we were saying that your eldest brother Liam was in the film and sadly died during the course of the filming. Yeah. As a family, were you aware that Liam and also Sam, your other brother, that had got involved in that scene?
Yeah, we knew that they both took drugs because Liam had been on it for so long. But with Sam, it was like recreational, and we didn't know that it was a problem until he died.
Yes.
So.
And your mum, I think, on the film says that they spent so much time concentrating on Liam that almost that eye was off the ball when it came to Sam, and didn't realise that he had a problem.
That's correct. Yeah.
Why do you think it was so important to Liam to be part of this? And when Jez approached him, he was like, "This is something you've got to do."
I think he did want to get off it, and I think he didn't want anybody else to get onto it. So it had to be shown, really.
And do you think he put that down to maybe having something to do with the area or such, all the influences and these certain things that we're trying to work out the reason why this is a cluster, why this is happening there? Do you think he was aware of something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How have you avoided it?
I've just known what happens. You don't know if it could be you, do you? It could just be anybody. You don't know.
But there are a lot of people there, a lot of young people there, who know what happens and do see what happens, but still get involved.
Yeah, because of what it did to my family, I think, and seeing the ins and the outs of it, it was sad to watch, and you just don't want to. You never want to get yourself in that situation.